Hey, thanks for tuning in for another great conversation here on Strong Leader Development Podcast. If you found value in today's episode, you can catch every episode on your favorite platforms: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. So we'd look forward to you tuning in and on those platforms. Hey, welcome back to all the listeners that we have, and sure glad to have you with us here again today. I've got a special treat today. I get to talk with my good friend Lisa Modrzejewski. Lisa, I want to give you a chance to tell you about yourself, and then I'll talk about how we know each other.
All right. Well, yeah, thanks for having me, Byron. It's great to get to chat in your platform. Um, my name is Lisa Modrzejewski. I'm the wife of Chris. We've been married for 20 years now. Just had our 20th anniversary in May, and we have four wonderful children. They're age 16, 14, 12, and then 7. So we are in the thick of the elementary, middle, and high school years of parenting. My husband, Chris, is a pastor at a local church, a small church. He's the pastor of youth and children. I guess technically he's called the family pastor, but he actually functions as like an executive pastor and has a lot of responsibility on the staff of leading the staff team at our church and preaching also on Sundays. So our lives are very much surrounded the church calendar, ministry calendar. Our kids go to public school. And then the other big thing is that I work full time for a Christian ministry, the Crucible Project. I've worked there full time for 5 years now. So we're juggling a very full life. And we live in the Chicago suburbs, Chicago, Illinois suburbs. And we've lived here since the early 2000s.
Yep. So glad to have you. Yeah. So you and I have a unique relationship because we both work for the Crucible Project. We are
Mhm.
counterparts. Lisa's the women's ministry leader. I'm the men's ministry leader. So we get to share a lot of time, a lot of screen time together, talking through ministry and life. And that's where this topic ended up coming up for us, right? This awareness of your spouse as a pastor. Also, I know Chris really well because he's a leader in Crucible as well as doing what he does. So we are we're in church and then we are a parachurch ministry. So we're just kind of up to our ears in ministry, aren't we, Lisa?
Yeah, for sure.
And and I've talked about it several times for pastors to remember the ministry's hard. Sometimes it's easy, as long as we're following Jesus and God, but sometimes it can be tough because it's a never-ending thing. And what came up for us recently was really how it is for you as a pastor's wife and your church and how you're relating to your church, even though you're working alongside him, guiding the church. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of leave that open to you a little bit and what you've experienced and what was going on.
hmm Yeah, I think as I reflected over our time in ministry, because we got married in 2005, and then he started in full time ministry in 2006. So shortly after we got married. So really, for the whole of our entirety of our marriage, we've been in full time ministry. And so I was young. I was 20 when we got married. So I really have grown up in ministry, grown up as into adulthood. Um, in a very public setting with him being a full-time pastor at our church. And so um, what I've reflected on is how just I know everybody's so different, right? But my own way of approaching the world is more of a cautious type, more fearful of what are others going to think of what I think, of what I say, and wanting to please, want people pleaser. Um, and not necessarily someone that is naturally an upfront leader. That's something I've grown into more. It's been a long journey of me learning how to first identify what I need that is different than what is happening in our church necessarily, like what my needs are, as a believer, as a Christian first, right? That needs to be fed, needs to be feeding myself. As a wife of someone who's upfront, what I need around his involvement at home and how much I'm able to give. Whereas when we first started out in ministry, I was just like, I'm here for the ride. I'm here for everything. I was at every event with him. I was, even though I wasn't being employed by the church, I wanted to be at every event, involved in everything he was doing. And as our family has grown and as I've gotten older, that has had to shift a lot. And so with that's come a lot of just self discovery and self awareness for me of how do I, yeah, what do I want? What do I need? What do I need to ask him for? Where do I actually lead the conversation in what is our family dynamic going to look like with him being at the church and me being at home more? Because I didn't realize my own voice in that, my own power in that for a long time, that like I needed to speak up and say, this isn't working for me. This is working. And that helped him to know where to say no to certain things and where to say yes to certain things. So those are just a starting point, some thoughts I've had.
Yeah, for sure. And Chris is just awesome. We're not going to throw him under the bus as a pastor.
No,
He's
he's
yeah,
wonderful.
he is an example for many pastors. I'll have to get him on here one day just to give an example of how to do the family dynamics while still doing the church. Yeah, just super example. And we don't want to blast church, right? We're not going to blast church, but there is a separation. There is a separation that seems to happen as the congregation who's coming in and being fed and being led and might be needy. There are things that there's a reason they're in church, right? Worshiping the Lord, being a part of the kingdom, all these different things, and they're being led by pastor, his wife, and other ministry leaders. And so that separation kind of affects you as a spouse. And how's that separation felt? And what are some things you've worked through to be able to try to be a part of the church, even though you're part of the guiding of the church?
A lot of this is driven by my own expectations too. I want to say that up
Yeah,
front, that my expectation of myself is that I will be serving somewhere
yeah,
regularly and that my kids will be serving also, first and foremost. And then so when it comes to being able to be a participant in worship, um, it does feel just it's my own stuff, but like it's hard for me to separate out when Chris is preaching, for instance, when he's up front leading, for me to be able to participate in that as an audience member when I'm thinking about like the study that he's had ahead of time and the way that our week has gone and the other things that are going on in our life. It's just not a place where I'm necessarily going to be able to just be someone who's listening and receiving it. There's a lot of other filters in the way. And then when it comes to um, participating in conversations about the sermons or like and just even having time as a family to be a part of the small group ministry, for instance, um, Chris's time is he works on the weekends very intensely, right, and during the weeks also. And so just in the nature of our lives, it's just hard for us to have time for him to be able to care for himself and recover, and be your average involved person consuming the things that the church offers. So small group ministries is hard. Um, Being at all the family activities on a Friday night because we've been going all week. So it's like that. And then also in the just participating in church life where there may be some discussion of like, oh, I like this, where someone's sharing about what they like about what the church is doing, what they don't like, and maybe a more critical spirit. um, I just myself have had to learn how to not take that personally as an attack on me or my husband, and obviously people don't mean it that way. And so but with that, I take a step back. It's that separation where not necessarily others are separating me, but it's myself. Like when I step back to protect, then I am by nature separate from the rest. I'm guarding my heart and guarding my heart against others' perceptions of me and my family. I think that's what I think of as separation. So it's not a hurdle that can't be overcome, but it takes a lot of inner work and a lot of me, doing my own spiritual work outside of that space so that I can show up fully present and willing to be able to stand in myself no matter how others are showing up.
Yeah, yeah, so beautiful, and so thankful that you and I have Crucible to be able to step into that. That gives us an opportunity to look into that. And I always plug Crucible somewhere along the way. And if anybody has an interest, the crucibleproject.org, go there. And yeah, and if you need to send us an inquiry or whatever, please do. We'd love to have you a part of that ministry. So yeah, this separation now sometimes makes it hard to be a member because you
Mm-hmm.
are in that space of, yeah, you're. It's kind of like the wizard behind the curtains, pulling the levers. You and I experience this just working Crucible weekends ourselves. Sometimes it's very hard for
Mm-hmm.
us to be a normal staff member because we're thinking at a different plane. Oh wow, I didn't know we had that going on. We got to fix that when we get back Monday.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
Yeah.
it's same kind of the same deal. It's a difficult thing, and pastors may not be aware that this is going on in their spouse's heart. And it doesn't have to be just the male pastor and the wife. This could be a woman on staff and her husband feels this same
Mm-hmm.
thing. Where do I get to be a member at times when I need to be a member? Right?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah. I was thinking even more of like when we go to some events where Chris is in charge or has a major role, which is pretty much everything, right? So from Sunday morning to midweek activities, I have had the thought before of like, I am a single parent
Mm,
while I'm here.
yeah.
And it's not true, right? Like he is still very involved. He actually has taken kids to things before, like many times. So this is nothing against Chris
Oh,
at all,
wow.
but it does, like just the way that I'm wired, that thought has come up and it affects how I show up, and unless I deal with it, right? Um, because it's like it has felt like hanging out at his thing, and it's if I, sometimes I find work to do, other times I want to just be able to be there and hang out and participate as a another member of the group, and the burden of parenting responsibilities has fallen to me, so I it's not as yeah, I just haven't been able to show up like I've wanted to and receive. So all that to say, we just have to find other places intentionally. You can't just assume that it's going to happen, that I'm going to get fellowship and get my learning and fed, that type of spiritual filling, right, at the events, unless there is special, like something set up.
Yeah, yeah, very good. Yeah, and that's your side, right? That's that part where you're recognizing it and to recognize it early. I mean, it's obvious with the face here that you're much younger than I am. And for you to be able to pick that up at such a great age, and the way that you're guiding your children through it as well is just beautiful. So if you were to give some advice to the pastor and his wife, or the pastor ministry leader and her husband who's not on staff, what are some things that you would give to them? Maybe things Chris has already done, that would help them guide their spouse a little bit better through this hard balance.
Hmm. I mean, communication is the main thing. Like, talk all the time about it, about what's working, what's not working, and be in counseling.
Yeah,
Honestly, have a couples counselor or be in counseling yourself. It's just invaluable. It's a great exercise in humility. I think most pastors and their wives are used to being lone wolves. We'll figure it out on our own. we can navigate whatever we need to. And that's a strength, but it's also a weakness. So I say find places where you are able to sit under someone else's leadership together and communicate. Check in regularly about, is this calendar working? Look at the calendar ahead of time together, and um, have an attitude of, there are no golden calves in the schedule. Um, we always go to this camp. We always lead this retreat. Um, if you have that, then I think that's a recipe for resentment. So having to stay flexible and say, your family and your marriage are first, and the church is second, and then let it trickle down that way. And if that's hard for other people on your church staff to hear, then maybe that's their work to do, not necessarily yours.
Right.
So,
Very much. And maybe that's not your church anymore. You know, I
well,
mean,
hmm,
we're just going to talk into reality, but yeah, maybe that's not your
yeah.
church anymore. Uh,
Yeah. Well, and that's actually, I didn't say this, that like we've been at the same church the entire
yeah.
time. Chris has been at the same church for almost 20 years now in full-time ministry, which I know is
Yeah.
unique. But I will say I think the only reason we have been able to stay in one church is because Chris is very strong in his boundaries and in saying, this is what I will tolerate and this is what I won't. This is what I can do, what I can't do, and it wouldn't work otherwise. We probably would be divorced, and we probably would definitely have a church chopped if we hadn't worked on a lot of this
Yeah,
stuff.
which is awesome. Yeah, you said a couple of key things in here. The one, and I talk a lot about the pastor and his or her identity. Right? Who are you? And even in a recent interview, talked about the pastor was talking about, yes, I am actually separate from my context, but it's very hard for me to do that. Right? And so who are you separate from your context? That's big. The idea of getting outside help, where we're actually get to take that ministry hat off, counseling, coaching, groups, and that feels like a betrayal to your church, right? I ought to be able to get this from my church, but it's okay to get the outside part. Crucible plays a role in that. I offer different things. I offer groups for pastors where they can take the hats off and just be them. Offer coaching where they have that opportunity. You and I both know how to connect people to some good counselors who can help them. So getting into that space is also super important, and it takes us down off of that pedestal that our whole congregation kind of puts us up on. We have to come down somewhere, because if not, there's a breaking point, and that's where the moral failures, divorce, different things happen, narcissism, that all of a sudden a tyranny comes on board, right? If we don't come down and do some of that work. So I so appreciate both you and Chris that you're stepping into that. All right, just for fun, you got to get rid of a golden calf last week or the week before, didn't you? Where the camp
Yeah.
that you always go to didn't end up working out. So tell us about that and how that felt.
It was not something that we wanted to do, and it was with crying. Right at first, it was like our kids were sad about it and crying when they found out we weren't going to go. And we missed out on the connection. But yeah, we usually go to this family camp. We've gone for years, since before our youngest was even born. And this year, just with our schedules and with finances and other things that we wanted to do, like a new season of life where there were some other activities that we really want to do that we wouldn't have been able to do if we went, um, we decided to not go. And it felt so, like, we both had moments where we were like, this feels so good to do something different, and to um but it was painful too. It came with like fear of, for me it was, I'll just say, just for me, like fear of what other people are going to think, fear of, what are they going to think we're saying about them, that we didn't go and others did. And um it was definitely a good exercise.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Oh my goodness, and the fears that you're talking about. My goodness, all of us who are in ministry, how often do we go through those kind of things? What are they going to think? What are they saying about us? What do they think we're saying about them? Yeah. Talk a little more about
Mhm.
those fears and how those come up.
Well, I don't they just come up
Yeah.
naturally because I'm a spinner, my mind is on its own making up scenarios and in an anticipatory kind of way.
Mhm.
And I think this is actually like something that has developed throughout my time in ministry is like a type of defensiveness that
Mhm.
I've really been exploring. But like I need to think of what other people are going to think before they think it so that I can be prepared, have my defense prepared, right? Um and so I'm always working on that. But yeah, the fears of is this going to send a message that this ministry isn't valuable? And that's not the message I want to send. It is an amazing ministry, this camp, and we send our kids there for individual camps. Um, so there's, but the fear that like, are we? Well, also there's a fear of because it is a place we were going to where part of what we got out of it for years was a type of vacation, a time of being away from home in a different space where the kids could be and we could all play and connect. But what we were finding is that it was becoming less and less of that for us and more of what felt like more ministry, like right or wrong. Like it just was feeling like we had to be, Chris and I were feeling like it wasn't fulfilling the purpose that we needed for our family anymore. So yeah, I don't, not wanting to disappoint people, not wanting to let others down, lots of people pleasing stuff.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Well, and it the defensiveness. I'm going to talk about the defensiveness for a minute because I've discovered in me I've always had a defensiveness. I've been in ministry all my life, but just not in church. I was part of Christian schools for 30 years, and when you become an administrator, you can't be anything but defensive half the time because people are always, coming at me in some way because I'm taking care of their most prized possession, their child. And I discovered recently part of my defensiveness is because I am in a ministry that I chose to do because I know there's good to be done. And because of that, I don't follow anything I don't believe in. So I believe deeply in what I do. And so it's very natural for the defensiveness to come up and want to honor the part of us, even though we're defensive, that's actually maybe something telling us we're still in the right space. Because if we're defensive about it, it means we really love portions of what we do. And
Mhm.
the commitment that we made to the Lord that this is what we're going to do in the kingdom. Yeah. How does that land
Mhm.
with you as I kind of throw that out for you?
Hmm. Yeah, no, it definitely lands the idea that I defend things that I care about, right? It's something worth protecting. Now, what is maybe happening is it may be tangled up in like protecting not just the thing I care about, but also my own image
Absolutely.
and my own fragile ego.
Yeah.
But behind it, that yeah, absolutely. That there's I like when I think of defending my husband, like I care about him deeply. And so wanting to defend him or my kids and my church and my ministry for sure.
Yeah, yeah, and then that ego part. I mean, that's just natural. One of our colleagues in Crucible, and in terms of just part of the ministry, had talked about how oftentimes what we end up doing unhealthy is only a gift out of balance. Right. Underneath it is something really good, but we've just gone a little bit overboard. And the defensiveness of our ministry is important, but also, oh, we're defending the heart too, and we're taking on something that might not be true uh,
Mhm.
ourselves, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, very much feel a character assassination. You talk about Crucible, you're talking about me. You talk about my husband, you're talking about me. You talk about my church, you're talking about me. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's been really difficult to balance that. So,
Yeah.
yeah, grateful. Well, I'm so grateful that you joined. I know it's vulnerable to do this and risky because you have a congregation, right? And somebody might know that you did this interview and they might be upset. Oh, I didn't know Lisa felt that way. And but I think honestly, you've handled this with such grace of understanding. Hey, this isn't about you guys. This is what's going on inside of me. And I hope this has been very valuable to pastors, ministry leaders, people on staff to know that their spouse has to deal with this. They may be clipping along, feeling like they're doing the good work, or they feel this. Hey, this is my obligation, hon. This is what I've got to be doing, and they leave everything in the dust. And like you said, we got to communicate, got to be clear about what's going on. Where are we in this ministry? Where are our boundaries? We got to be people. So, thank you so much for humanizing something that many people don't realize is going on. Yeah,
Yeah.
for us today. So, and
Yeah, you're welcome. If
yeah, go ahead.
one final thought I was thinking was like you probably, pastors probably know this already, but your ministry is only as healthy as your family and your marriage and your spouses.
Agreed.
So you can be doing great work out there, but if the collateral damage at home is out of proportion, then is it worth it? So
Exactly.
I think it's
Yeah.
so wonderful that you're helping people to look at
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. Well, and I'm so grateful for you for so many ways. I mean, we know each other on so many platforms, but yeah, just grateful for your vulnerability and stepping into this to help others as well. That's your ministry heart. And so, yeah, glad that you came on board today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right. Are you curious about how strong leader development can support your growth? Book a free discovery session with me, and I'll walk you through what it looks like and how I can help you in whatever fashion you need. I like to listen and hear what you have and design whatever works best for you. So reach out and book that free session